let's talk about that. Welcome to the conversation where we will highlight several different ministries and various topics of things, well, that we just want to talk about. Sit back, relax, and join in the conversation. Hey Newberg, it's Allie, your Director of Student Ministries, Young Adults, and Communications at Newberg. And today I am excited to be here on Zoom with these two awesome people. And so you'll see Sarah Sager and then Angela Montgomery down here. And I'm going to let them actually introduce themselves to you guys, and we'll get into this conversation. So Sarah, do you mind just telling us who you are, where you're at, and maybe like how we even know each other?
Awesome. Thanks, Allie. I really appreciate you inviting me into this dialogue. As Allie said, I'm Sarah Sager. We met each other our freshman year at Great Lakes Christian College. So Allie and I have known each other for a while. I studied Bible theology with a minor in missions at Great Lakes, and currently I am working and living in Rochester Hills, Michigan. I am working on getting my master's degree from Oakland University in higher education leadership with a emphasis in social justice. So a lot of student theory, a lot of equity classes, and a lot of good questions about race dialogue and what our role is in that. So that's a little bit about me. And I think most of you guys know Angela, but take it away, Angela.
Hey, Newberg, Angela Montgomery, AKA Parker's mom. Have been attending Newberg for, oh my goodness, I think 8-9 years, somewhere in there. Currently the coordinator for Hospitality Week. Also do Sunday school for the younger children, and just kind of help out where we can.
So today we are opening up the discussion of social justice, and particularly right now we are seeing a lot of protests happening upon the topic of Black Lives Matter. And so we really wanted to dive into that conversation today, to provide resources, but to also just open the dialogue within your homes with you, yourself, whatever it might be. But yeah, so I actually want to start off with Angela, if you want to take it away and just kind of share how the conversation even started with you earlier on.
Thanks, Allie. And again, it is my privilege and honor to be here, and thank you for thinking of this. But the conversation started because someone asked how I was doing amongst all of this, and kind of thrown by the question because it's a lot going on between the COVID and the racial equality conversation. So I asked for clarification, and it dawned on me that it was a step out of this person's comfort zone to even approach the conversation of how are you doing with the George Floyd and the protests and the racial equality conversation, because most people are uncomfortable talking about those things. And so what a lot of people don't know about me is I did grow up in the city of Detroit. I've worked in a number of places. They say I am a lawyer by education. I don't tout that, nor do I don't advertise that at all, because I don't consider myself that lawyer type. But I have worked with a lot of nonprofits and underserved communities as just a community advocate, as a lawyer, as just a person growing up in the city and seeing the disadvantages. And I think it's important, having lived in Livonia now for 11 years, or 10 or 11 years, having gone to school in the University of Alabama, one of the most notorious racist schools in the country, having just seen and done a lot, I think it's important for people to be able to talk and to know it's okay to talk to minorities and people of color, just and people of just different social classes to get their view and aspect on things.
Yeah, definitely. And through this, like, what, I guess, have there been a lot of conversations in your own life that you realize have been opened up lately?
Not as much as I want them to. I've had a couple of friends call and you know, we've sat down and we've talked. I have, of course, been offering more assistance to the lower income and the underserved population as far as getting resources when it comes to the COVID stuff, but also when it comes to people just knowing their rights. But the hardest thing about all of this is having to have the conversation with my child. And the fact that he is for the first time really realizing what racial inequality is. He was not as aware of it as before. Going on the playground, yeah, you may have one or two people that may not play with you, but to see it on the news and to have your child say to you, I don't want what happened to George Floyd to happen to me. I'm too young to die. And to hear that not everybody is willing to have the conversation, you know, I wish there was more talk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. I am at a loss for words, you know, like that's just nothing a lot of us experience, especially in this community. So, what has that conversation been like with you and Parker?
We don't shield, when I say we, Marshall and I don't shield him from the news. We limit the information, just like with the COVID thing. You know, you can't watch it. No one should watch this stuff 24/7. It's just bad for your health, mental health, physical health. It's just bad for you. So we do limit the amount of information and exposure. But the conversation is, we don't really have resources. I know CNN did the special with Sesame Street, to the town hall special. And there have been, you know, more and more books and podcasts, broadcasts about this lately. Thankfully, Parker School, right across the street from Newburgh, Rosedale, they are a school that has a very diverse population anyway. And when this all started, they immediately made sure that as part of their social characteristics and characteristic traits or responsibility, they sent out some things. So Livonia Public Schools has some resources that they were sending out to parents, but our conversations within the home have just been from a personal level of what you may experience. And of course you need to alter those conversations based on how old your child is, their level of understanding, their exposure, because believe it or not, there are some children that have not played with, been exposed to other minorities, and in such a world as today. And then there are children, much like Parker, that grew up and really didn't recognize or see the difference, because guess what? This is an adult problem. It's something that as adults and as you get older, you have either been trained or you've observed or you've heard. It's a learned behavior. It's not innate. It's more of, to me, a learned behavior. And I say that having watched children and having taught children and worked around so many children all my life. So
yeah,
I don't know, Sarah, you may have some more academic type resources, but yeah.
I'll honestly, I'd like to hand that over to Sarah. With like, it's a learned behavior a lot of times in the homes, and especially coming from the end of white women in leadership too, but like just our community of being in a white privileged community. And so what are some resources, Sarah, that you found in your studies, or what are, yeah, I mean, you grew up also in Ohio too, right? So we've talked about that. But yeah, so like what, I guess, what do you have to share in that end?
Mhm. So, Angela, thank you for sharing. I'm not a parent. I actually grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood. I went to a rural high school. I went to a PWI institution. And so, like, talking about race and acknowledging it was something that my family had the privilege of not explaining to me. I grew up with these lenses that I thought everyone in the world experiences the same things the way I do. And so that's kind of the understanding that I had about race in America and all of it until I think my undergraduate career, but really with my graduate program. Like I said, it's an emphasis in social justice. And so the first few semesters we took equity classes and we did a lot of race dialogue. And it was very humbling for me to sit and listen to the experiences of others around me. I don't want to say for the first time, but I think in an academic setting, really for the first time. And so the resources that I've learned from and that I find very helpful for individuals who want to learn more, I have them in the next tab. So if I look away, that's why. But the first one is just a 3-page essay, and it's called White Privilege, Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack by Peggy McIntosh. That's a free resource, and it like describes white privilege in a really, I would say, simple way for people who haven't unpacked that before. The other resource that I read is by Dr. Beverly Tatum, and it's called Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? And that one is a really great, it gives a great historical, like beginning 400 odd years ago to redlining to now. And I think it also, the newest edition talks about the Obama administration and even the Trump administration. So that one is good. I always suggest that one. And then one of the new ones that I've started reading is I'm Still Here, Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness by Austin Channing Brown. Fun fact, she actually lives in Southeast Michigan. So one day I want to meet her, but she just gives a real example of her life and navigating through her Black identity in a world that largely wants people to ignore it. And then if you're looking for something with a faith component, which I think is very important, The Color of Compromise by Jamar Tisby is a great book, and Amazon Prime is actually doing an exclusive right now where they're taking the book chapter by chapter and he's explaining it and breaking it down. So if you're a reader, I'm a reader, I would choose those ones. But there are a lot of podcasts out there. I listen to Pass the Mic a lot, and Brene Brown's Unlocking Us, I think that's what it's called. She has a lot of great speakers and she talks about that. So I don't know how academic those resources are, but they have helped me. If anyone out there has read those resources and they want more, I always, and specifically in like a white perspective, I would say White Fragility by DiAngelo is a really great reference. But if it's your first time like acknowledging it and having these dialogues, I would say hold off on that. Dr. DiAngelo's got great words and great wisdom, but she's a little sharper, and I'm here for that. But if this is your first time engaging in those dialogues, I would always suggest Dr. Tatum's book.
And all those resources that Sarah just said, I'll have her send those to me and we'll put those in the description below or attached to wherever this video is that you're viewing it on. But yeah, these resources are out there and they're important. These conversations are important to have in your homes. Wherever you are, whoever you are, we all need to be having them. And I have been having a lot of these conversations amongst friends, and I grew up in Southeast Michigan, in Waterford on the edge of Pontiac, Michigan. And I've often been sharing a lot of just how much I've had to learn, even just in this period of time, when you think you might be on this end of, you think you know already, right? And that's been really humbling to remember, like, there's still a lot to learn. So just another resource, and I threw it out on my Facebook page, so if you follow me, it's out there, but I'll also put it in the description. But it's an organization called ADL, which is an Anti-Defamation League. It is a Jewish-based organization out of Southfield, I believe, is their headquarters still. But the program actually was something I got involved with in high school, where we were taught as peers. There was a select group of us that would go into a week's training every year, and we would be trained to talk to our peers about diversity. And in Waterford at that time, I often share, like, it was one of those times where we would have a lot of dialogue of, you know, we have these Pontiac families coming into our Waterford schools, which as a kid, you know, I remember thinking, what does that even mean? And as you said, like, Parker at his age, at a young age, like, there's a lot that you just don't realize. And as a kid, I didn't realize it, even as a high schooler. So it's important to have these conversations, no matter what age, however they vary, with growth at that time. But I remember that learning in ADL, in that program, the importance of, it's not a them or they conversation. It's an us conversation. Like, the reason that they trained us to go and talk is because it taught us how to talk with peers. It taught us how to have a conversation like this. And so if you're looking for how to do that, ADL is a great place to also go to, because it's going to start in our homes, in the roots of where you live, right? And so if those programs are not happening in your schools, if your kids aren't learning these things in your schools, that is an issue. That is a problem that we need to solve. And as well, I'll take it back from the schools as to, if we aren't having these conversations in our churches, that is a major issue. We come to the church to have raw conversations, in the sense that we know we're here to support one another, right? And when I say church, I don't just mean the walls of Newburgh. When I say church, I mean your fellow Christians who might not be in Michigan, might be in a different state. You know, like, I consider Sarah is in my church, you know, and now that Angela knows Sarah is in Angela's church. And that's how it works. And we have to remember that is how it works. So jumping off that point, Angela, I know that in a few weeks, I don't know if the date's been set, but I know that there's conversation that sprung out of that, like, a mission trip you went on just a few weeks ago, to launch a conversation into our church, Newburgh, right? So I just wanted to, you might not have a date, but just kind of add into, what is that conversation going to be about? Why do you feel also the importance of it to have at Newburgh?
So the first, I hope, of many conversations, and I don't know if I'm supposed to say this or not, but I'm actually going to be with the women's ministry group on Thursday, this coming Thursday, and be talking with them about this issue and some other things. My hope is that we could have more conversations later, not just with the women's group or whatever format. There's my intrusion, my Zoom bomb. Have other conversations further down the road, you know, not just with me, but with others, however that looks. But I think this first step in doing it this coming Thursday is important, to talk to some people that may not be comfortable or may not have you know, they just may have one-on-one questions. You'll be surprised that the type of things that people have wondered and just maybe felt too embarrassed to ask, or, you know, uncomfortable to ask, or just they want to know more on a personal level. So
Yeah, definitely. That'll be really awesome dialogue. Now, I do know that this video will come out on Friday, so hopefully you caught that conversation on Thursday. But as well, like Angela said, this isn't the only conversation that we need to have. This is a conversation we need to continue having, and being very aware of it. Sarah, I just also wanted to ask for you, your insight onto why is this such an important conversation, and how should the church or ask the church to have this in our congregations?
Yeah, disclaimer, I do not work at a church, so I do not speak on behalf of a certain church body, but like Ali said, we're all in the priesthood, like we're Christians, and so we are the church. But I don't, like, obviously the church cannot ignore it. And when I look at the Bible and read the scriptures, I always look at the person of Jesus and who he was on earth. And in every instance where he acknowledged someone, and it could be the way that the author wrote it, I acknowledge that, but he always named the person by where they were from, who they were, and he didn't ignore that about them, like the Samaritan woman. Why is it so important that she was a Samaritan woman? Well, we have commentary and we can read that and we know why that's such a important part of that story. And so when I think of the way that Jesus, Paul, other great, like Stephen, any great leader in the Bible approached someone, there's always a detail of like who they were, where they were from, what's going on. And it's always important for us to know that because it impacts what was happening at that time. And I think for the church to largely, I don't want to say ignore, but have ignored people and who they are in the aspect of race and ethnicity and history, that's ignoring who they are and what they bring to the table. And as a church body, we want to have raw, authentic conversations. But if we don't know who Ali is or who Angela is, and every day we have to, hey Ali, how's that painful thing going for you? And every day we have to have Ali or Angela acknowledge that, we can't get past that point to move forward in the conversation if we are always addressing one obvious thing or we're ignoring it. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think like it's important for the church to have these dialogues so we're not always at, oh look, here we are, just the same conversation over and over again. And if we're ignoring who the people in our congregation are and what they bring to the church, their unique talents, their service, who they are as in the image of God, then we're doing such a great disservice. And I can't imagine that's what Jesus wanted to do, like when he helped, when he stopped everything he was doing on his way somewhere to help out someone in that moment. I mean, even Jesus being from Galilee, like that was like, whoa, who's this person? Like wild. And when I think of, you know, our history books or like the commentaries that we have about American and American history, it's whitewashed. It is not written in a diverse perspective. It is one perspective. And so if we think that this is the only perspective out there, then that's the issue. And as believers, we need to have these conversations so I can know authentically and have a better understanding of how I can serve God in the community that I'm around, instead of just ignoring people's struggles and pains and victories and whatnot, because everyone doesn't see the world like me. And that's awesome. I don't want them to, because we'd get nothing done. And so the more the church can acknowledge that and have these conversations, the more helpful it is. And I think that would bear such, I I don't know, awesomeness to God's fruitfulness and his promise of faithfulness if we can have those conversations in the church instead of looking it over or making it a political stance with the church. I think that we are Christians, and how will they know we're Christians? By our love. But if our love is only for certain people who look like me or think like me, then that's not the point.
And Sarah brings up two like really awesome points. And the first is, as you know, Jesus was our savior. The rest of us are disciples. So the savior took time to eat and drink and fraternize with all those that were not like him. And so if the savior, the one and only person that's a savior, can do that, then why the rest of us as a church or just as a people, as disciples, aren't following that example? I don't understand it. And I don't understand how it can be, as she so brilliantly points out, the differences can be ignored. The differences make us who we are. And matter of fact, the kids have that Sunday school song. The church is not the place, it's not the steeple, but it's the people. Allie, like you said, it's everybody. And the people are what make or break us and make or break this world. And the conversation starters, and not only the conversations, but the actions that we have from the conversations are that's what's going to make the difference. That's what's going to move the needle.
And that kind of brings up the biggest point at the end here, Angela, that you just said, is the actions. The actions are going to be what moves the needle, moves us forward. And the point that we keep hammering out is that this isn't the end of the talks of racial discrimination. It is not the end. We're not even in the middle of it. We are in the very beginning, and we hope that Newburgh, but we hope the greater church, we hope the global church, we hope that if you aren't a Christian and you're watching this and you stumbled upon this video, we hope that you are encouraged to find these resources, to have conversations, and to learn. Before I wrap up completely, I wanted to throw it over to either of you guys to add in any last thoughts.
I would just encourage individuals, specifically white individuals, who are concerned, afraid, unsure. Like, this will shift your worldview in the best way. Well, except for Jesus, like that's the best way. But I think that as white people, the worst thing that someone can say is like, you're a racist, and accuse us of being racist. But we live in a racist society built on structures and power authorities that are not equitable or equal, and we have to learn about our identity in that before we can help fix it, because we can't, like, we have to be the ones to help that as well. I would also say, be aware of like the content you are reading and just know more about the voices in your life. If you're following people on Instagram or Facebook and they're predominantly white, switch it up. Follow some more people of color. Follow, if you're a woman, I follow a lot of lady accounts. Well, let's put some male perspective in there and whatnot. If you're a reader, read diverse authors, read books with different characters who don't look and think like you. Because the minute we stop talking and stop thinking that we are right, the more we can learn in this conversation. So I would just encourage people to stop and listen to other people.
And going along with Sarah, I want to challenge everybody to accept that you all are prejudiced. I'm prejudiced, you're prejudiced, everybody's prejudiced. You have a prejudice for or against something. And what you have to understand is framing your prejudice and seeing if it's rational, where it came from, what happened. A lot of times we do and say things just because. You don't think about it. you know, it's rhetoric that you hear, it's things that you've been told, not that you've experienced, or things that you've been brought up to believe. And that goes from the very old to the very young. Once you start facing your inner prejudice and your inner thought systems and the way that you think, you'll be surprised. You'll open up to a lot more. You're challenging what is considered tradition or traditional thought. And you'll find yourself, I dare you to do it, because you'll find a weight being lifted, or a just, shall we say, an epiphany, the aha moment where you're going to be so much better off, that says, hey, you know what? I can change this. I can do this. It's not so hard, because now I kind of understand where it's coming from. You know, I get what my thought process, or I now have acknowledged my thought process, and now I can change it. So just be open, be loving, be kind, and understand that all things are not equal, and we have a long way, but we're going to make it. So.
He said, this isn't going to be the end of our conversation. I know that Newburgh staff has talked about the importance that we continue having this. And one simple step that we have taken, but is not a win situation and end all, but is that we are selling these yard signs that I'll post here that show our stance of these social injustices in the world. And as the United Methodist Church, we are firm believers in social justice. And so we want to continue standing with those and learning. Just because we have a yard sign doesn't mean we understand completely, right? But it is one way to say, we as Newburgh, we as Christians, we understand, or we hear you, and we are with you, and we want to learn more about what's happening. And I just want to leave us with our welcome statement, actually, before I end, because last year, 2 years ago, honestly, it's been a blur, but we revised our welcome statement. We've become part of the Reconciled Ministries Network, and we revised our welcome statement to literally be more inclusive of all people. And so I really think, like, this is what we as Newburgh, as representatives of Christ in Livonia, but also as representatives of Christ for the global church, have stated, and we want all people to recognize. So I'm just going to read it. Newburgh United Methodist Church seeks to be a community of faith, healing, hope, and hospitality. We are called to recognize Christ in everyone. Our doors are open to welcome and affirm all persons without prejudice relating to age, race, ethnicity, culture, citizenship, language, gender identity, sexual orientation, marital status, economic condition, physical or mental ability, or any other status or condition. That is our welcome statement, Newburgh. And we do this inviting all persons to our table. When we take communion and we stand up there breaking bread, we break it because Jesus broke that for every single person watching this video, for every single person you have encountered in your life. Now, the three of us are not going to meet every single person you meet in your life. This conversation, like we said millions of times, needs to continue. So we need your help to have those conversations with people you know. And we are challenged to do the same in our lives. So together, let's shake up this world a little bit with what Jesus has taught us, because Jesus shook up the world in the scriptures we read every Sunday. So join us in that. If you want to pre-order that yard sign, awesome, do that. I'll put the link in the description. If you are thinking about the yard sign and it's a little while after, get a hold of me. I will get you one. I'll make you one with my bare hands. We will get
I'm
you
gonna have to get one.
but join us in this, because as scary as it could be to start in the conversation, it will be the most fulfilling thing to open our eyes to something that is very important in this world, that allows everyone to know how loved they are because Jesus created them the way they are. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you guys for joining the conversation and leading us in just what is a start to what we need to talk about more. See you later, Newberg.